Okay, pjnet.tv, part 2, 9:30 on the East Coast. If that's what time it is, you're watching this live. You might be watching this recorded. We're running a bumper. We are recording. We are streaming to all kinds of places. Our chat room is waiting, so we will count down to Studio 14. Well, welcome or welcome back, as the case may be. This is pjnet.tv. What an exciting 20 minutes. What a powerful 20 minutes, I should say, that we just spent with Exercise Your Faith, EYFpodcast.com. If you missed it, well, go to the PJNet Facebook page and you can find it there. But the fun is only beginning. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that you are about to see Michelle Medlock Adams, because normally on Wednesday night at this time, that's why you would be here. But we have something better. I mean, Michelle, this has all been planned and scripted. Okay. Michelle has made arrangements to bring a special guest on, and many of you already know her, and her name is Eva Marie Everson. That's a lot of EVs, I know, because I had to type all this stuff out. And here she is. Many of you already know her. Now, I don't know if everybody knows that she, believe it or not, she wrote a book. Are you up to your old tricks again, chicanery and what have you? But and how many have you written, Eve?
The one that came out yesterday was my 40th title.
One for every year.
What? Yeah, sure. We'll go with that. Okay, well, thank you.
Your nose, as our noses extend or extrude themselves.
Yeah, that would be nice to think, I think.
I know that, many, like myself, when I hear your name, I immediately think Writers Conference, because you are the champion of what, two?
Well, actually, we've combined them into one because of COVID last year. The conference center had to shut down where the North Georgia conference was. And so the conference that we were going to have last year, I think it was supposed to start like on March the 10th or something like that. But at any rate, it was supposed to start on a Wednesday. On the Friday before, the country shut down. And so we, contacted the conference center and we booked everything for this year for April. Well, then last year in about November, December, somewhere in there, we got a phone call from the conference center and they said that the conference center had been purchased. Conference centers really suffered this past year.
Yeah. Whoa, no kidding.
Yeah. I mean, they couldn't have anybody there. So they lost their revenue. And so they had sold. And I imagine that what they said was that they were not going to do any conferences at all this year. And I think that is because what they're doing is a massive renovation. Well, that left us with, a pickle. Well, left us at a pickle. And so we made a decision that instead of postponing the Kids Select Conference for one more year, we were going to make it a part of the Florida conference. So it's going to run just before the Florida conference. So it will be the Kids Select Conference, and then I'll go in
back
Florida
to back, literally back to back.
Literally back to back. Yes.
When are you going to rest? I mean,
well, you know what? I did all that last year. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do a lot of Christian Writers Conferences and speaking engagements across the country in churches, women's groups, etc. And of course, last year everything came to a standstill. I had gone to 2 conferences right before the shutdown, and then I didn't see an airport again until November. And so from the end of February until November, I didn't go into an airport. However, we opened up our conference last year in October, the Florida Christian Writers Conference. And I believe we were the first conference to do that, to say, we're going to try this thing. And of course we were limited to the number of people we could have. And we put all kinds of safety precautions in place, and we have a single case of COVID that came out of it. We're
Right.
so happy to say. And then I went to the conference in Asheville in November. And then this year, I've already been back to Asheville, and slowly the conferences are starting to open back up again. And, I probably did close to, I don't know, 10, 12 a year before COVID. So there's a part of me, though, that I have to tell you, I did enjoy the being at home last year. I did not enjoy not being able to go where I wanted to go when I wanted to go, or seeing who I wanted to see when I wanted to see them. I did not like that very much. But there was something quite nice about being at home. And then there's something wonderful about traveling and doing the work that I do and helping new writers or writers who have been at it for a while and are now struggling with their calling and their purpose and that kind of thing. So I'm excited to see that it's starting to get back up again.
Well, I know that, and I didn't really I thought about people like yourself, the people that put on conferences, thinking, how are they adapting? But it never dawned on me, the conference centers themselves.
That's their revenue.
Yeah. And so they sold, I bet they sold for 10 cents on the dollar, and then they start pouring money in it. I'm like, oh, okay.
There's no telling. We heard of a lot of conference centers that either just completely shut down last year or were purchased, because they just kind of put themselves up on the auction block just to keep the place from just crumbling into nothing, like, 10 years from now being a shell of what it was, and saying, oh, well, that used to be a Christian conference center. And I know the one in North Georgia had an absolutely beautiful chapel that we went into a couple of years ago. Our group was small, so we didn't have to go into that chapel, but we were touring and thinking about, well, what if we enlarged this particular conference and using the chapel? And it was absolutely beautiful. And what a shame that would be if this building that at one time inhabited the praises of God's people was just sitting in ruins. I mean, that would just be so sad to me. But, obviously over the course of the centuries and the millennia, there are churches that have fallen to ruin. And I still think some of the stones that are clinging to life will also then have those praises clinging to the stones. I really believe that.
Well, I know it's been very tough, but it's hard for me to. I'm trying hard to listen. You have many peers and proteges in the chat room heaping praises upon you.
Oh, and, how sweet!
Among them, Doug Carter is mentioning you, Josephine Massaro. I'm probably going to leave some people out, but folks, we appreciate you dropping in the PJNet.TV live chat room and enjoying the program and the fellowship at the same time. What I was trying to drill down on is, okay, look, we can close every conference center. You know what? We can close every church, or the powers that be may do so. But authors, Christian authors, are still going to feel the call to write. People are going to feel the need and desire to worship. So it's going to mutate. We are going to adapt, but you cannot extinguish the fire of Christianity and God's influence on the world. And I admire you and many of your peers for persevering and adapting, and not just tucking and running and curling up in a fetal position. Meanwhile, well, okay. Speaking of good books, do you have read any good books lately? We're.
Yeah. One of the things that last year was able to help where I was concerned, I had started working on this particular book, Dust, that came out yesterday. 2.5 years. It took me 2.5 years to write it, and then almost a year from contract to publication. I don't even remember when I signed the contract, but it takes about a year. So it was a long process. And one of the good things for me about last year was that I was able to wrap everything up and get it ready for publication and give it the attention that it needed. Because for me, I've never taken this long to write a book before. It's usually 6 months tops. for a novel. But this is 125,000 words, and most novels usually hit somewhere between 75 to 90,000 words. So it was a lot of work, but it was a labor of love because I so believe in the message behind the book.
Well, the title is quite simple, Dust. Could you elaborate on that for us?
Yes, I can. I was listening, and there's like, again, so now it's like 3.5 years ago at this point. I was listening to my Pandora radio, and I have a wide variety of musical interests. I love classical music. I love praise and worship music. I love Frank Sinatra, Doris Day, Dean Martin, that era. Absolutely love it. But I also, because of my age, I love the 70s as well. And so a lot of times I will have my Pandora radio on a shuffle, and I had it on shuffle that day, or I just simply had it on the 70s. But the song Dust in the Wind came on.
Kansas.
That song has always been such a haunting song to me. And I knew that the author, Kerry Livgren, had become a believer, and that he had gone on to, he's teaching Sunday school now. And the last I heard, he was working on a musical about the life of Lazarus, Lazarus come forth. Just, that he had walked away from the rock scene for Christ. And so I just really started thinking about that line, all we are is dust in the wind. And because of the era, I started thinking about some things that had happened to me about that same time, about 1977, 78, 79, somewhere in there. And I just started writing. And I mean, literally, the song is playing and all of this is happening, and I'm in front of my computer, and I just literally started writing. And the next day, my admin came to the house and the home office, and we were working. And I said, "Hey, I want to read something to you." And I read her what became the second chapter. But what I just kept getting struck by was this notion of being dust in the wind. All we are is dust in the wind. And I thought about the scripture that says, from dust you were formed, to dust you will return. And I'm like, but that's just our bones. What about who we are? What about the legacy that we leave behind? And then as I'm thinking on that, it's more that it's not the extraordinary people who are going to leave the majority of the legacy in this life. It is the ordinary people. It is the people that you come into contact day in and day out. Your parents, your grandparents, your teachers, the crossing guard at the bus stop. So many just normal, everyday people who are just living their lives in and out, in and out, in and out, and thinking, I'm just living. So many of those people will then get toward the end of their lives and go, well, what was all this about? Mm-hmm. What did I accomplish? Did I accomplish anything? And the fact of the matter is we all accomplish something. Whether that's a good something or a bad something is really up to us and how we choose to live our lives. But I wanted to tell the story of a woman who is looking back on her life. She is now in her mid-60s, and she's thinking, what was it all for? And being in your mid-60s is not the oldest in the world, I know, but it's at that place where we start to say, well, there's still enough time left if I wanted to, but I've wasted all these years. The truth is we haven't wasted anything. You and I talked about that just a minute ago, wasted a lot of years, but nothing is wasted when we put it in the hands of God, nothing. And also I wanted to look at how the life of someone we never, ever meet can actually affect our lives. Is that butterfly effect true? Can the butterfly flap its wings, way over in Africa and cause a breeze over in Florida, let's say? I wanted to look at that and see just how possible that would be. And I discovered that it was possible. Maybe not necessarily that a butterfly can flap its wings, but that the butterfly
But
effect.
metaphorically.
Yes, metaphorically, it can happen. And so because of the detail involved in dust, because I was going to take lives and tear the onion layers apart from them and truly look at how we interact and how we do leave that legacy, whether it's good or bad, took a lot of work, took a lot of planning. It took a lot of character building, world building, that kind of thing. So there was a lot to it. Then there was also a period of a few months where in 2019 my brother became very ill, and I dropped everything and went up to Georgia and nursed him through the 13 weeks of his illness, and then helped escort him into the arms of Jesus. But there were those 3 months, and then a little bit after that I just simply I couldn't work. I just couldn't do it. And so there was that little bit of a break. But the interesting thing about it is that even my brother's death made me reflect on the whole life and death scenario. And that was woven into Dust as well. So that's what Dust is about. And I think that's why I'm so excited about it. You know, just the other night was at a Bible study that I teach, and someone asked me, what is Dust about? And I gave them the elevator pitch, as we call it. And one of the ladies in the group, who I believe she's in her late 70s, she said, I can't wait to read that because I've been wondering this. What purpose did I have in this world? And I think that when she gets to the end of it, she's going to know the answer to that question.
Eva, so many things. I'm not one of these take note type people. But you said something, you said a lot actually. First of all, I did not know that the book was inspired by that particular song. I used to be a disc jockey. I used to play that song. I remember when it came out. Little did I know that a member of that band is now a champion for the kingdom of Christ. I did not know. Now, it's odd because many of us that lived through those years, the 60s, the 70s, the early 80s, you know, we were pretty, well, we were bad. but we wanted a different future. We knew that. Now, we were misled, we were deceived, but we definitely didn't want to be like the generations before us. And now,
just come to the 60s.
Right. So now we approach what I would call the fourth quarter in football, and we're starting to evaluate more and more. You know, what impact, what difference is it going to have made? We begin to grapple with, we begin to face, or we better, our mortality. And we see our friends, you know, the prayer request used to be about careers and childbearing and child raising and school. Now it's about infirmity after infirmity, death after death. You know, we are getting older. I'm rambling, but
no, but it's true. I mean, another lady at Bible study the other night said, she says, maybe I'm getting older, but it just seems like it's more and more people that I know that have cancer and are dying. And you know, I'm like, yep, it's all part of getting older. You know, all of a sudden, and I remember my parents saying this, all of my friends are dying, you know, and yeah, that's part of getting older.
Well, and you can deny it. You can avoid it, you know, but for me, it motivates me, Eva, because there's something there, that urgency of the fourth quarter, you know, does something to you. Now, you said something that just hit me between the eyes, because you used the word, you talked about ordinary people. Now, let me recite our mission statement as it is today, but it has had one word changed. Let me see if you can find that one word. Our mission statement at PJNet is to provide a platform for everyday Christians to share their walk with Christ. Everyday Christians. You know what it used to say?
Everyday?
Ordinary.
Ordinary, yeah.
Now, the message that you are conveying is, we think of ourselves as irrelevant, ordinary, okay?
Right.
But it dawned upon me, and it was very early on, so that there really should not be any such thing as an ordinary
Yeah.
Christian.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's what we consider the ordinary lives that are going to leave the most value, because there are not, everybody is not a Billy Graham. Everybody is not a Helen Keller. Everybody is not a president or a queen or a king or whatever. We're just, it's the ordinary people that hold us together as a people itself. We are the glue. And, somebody can look at me and say, oh, well, you've written books, and look at Michelle. Michelle has written books and all of this. And, here's the thing. I'm just going to talk about Michelle for a minute, because Michelle writes predominantly children's books, and they're wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful. In fact, she and I have written one together that we just got a contract offer on. Yay. So, but you know what? She may not ever be a Dr. Seuss. Okay. She may not ever be a Mother Goose. Those two things just rhymed. But there are children whose lives she has touched with her words, and she may never know this side of heaven what one of those children will do within the kingdom.
Well put.
And they will, Michelle may be running on streets of gold, and that child will be an adult here and giving a speech somewhere and say, it all began with this book that I read when I was 5 years old or 3 years old that my mother read to me. And it was by Michelle Medlock Adams, and she won't know it on this side of heaven, but she will know it there. And that's what I'm talking about. We just do what God puts in front of us to do, whether that is to write, great works of literary fiction or nonfiction, or an opus, a musical opus, or just to raise our children. And I shouldn't even use the word just, because that's the greatest job in the world, is raising children. And you cannot compare those two things, because they're equally valuable. You just don't know. You just don't know. And you won't know until somebody points it out to you. Whether that's the Lord, like, oh, by the way, you wrote a book and it inspired someone, and that someone did this and this and this and so on and so forth. We hear stories about all the time, about leaving a book on a plane, and somebody reads it and it changes their lives. They were about to make a horrible mistake, but they happened to sit in that seat, and there was the book, and they picked it up out of the pocket in front of them, and it changed everything. And the person who left the book behind didn't even mean to leave the book behind. They just forgot it. But God did.
Yeah. I'm thinking back, reflecting on the words you're speaking, and some of the more significant, if not turning points, certainly waypoints in my own life, in my own journey in walking with Christ. Those points were not pivot points that were brought about by the Billy Grahams of the world, and I use him only as an example. There are many.
Sure. Yeah.
It was my fifth grade teacher.
Yes.
It was my high school coach.
Yes.
It was the lady who served in an interim capacity as the youth director that really shook me one time. And I every now and then I have a chance to thank them personally. And I think it means a lot to them.
Oh, yeah.
But every now and then I get to thank them publicly, and that's a special blessing. And I say all that not to bore you with the details of my life. We won't go into that. But I think the point that you are making and that I am applauding is, as Christians, our everyday walk in our world. As you said, we won't know, and that somebody was deeply moved this side of heaven. I just want to hear God say, well done.
Well done. Yeah.
My good and faithful servant.
Yeah. And when I say I didn't do anything, oh yes, you did. You just don't know it. You just
exactly.
because you know what, every more like and I remember especially when the kids were little and my husband was working and I was working and like on the weekends it was this mad panic to get the house clean and the cars washed and visit with friends and then on Sunday the whole church thing and it was just like chaos from Monday to Sunday, just more chaos. But the alarm goes off at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever it goes on, and you get up and you do it again. It's kind of like that old Beatles song. There was that got up, got out of bed, ran a comb through my head. It's just like did this, did that, did this, did that, and it's like it's just an ordinary day, but it's not. It's not. Do you remember the movie Ordinary People? Because we were talking about ordinary. Do you remember the movie Ordinary People?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
But I was, in those years, I spent quite a bit of time in a less than cognizant capacity.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to.
I don't remember Woodstock either, but I was there. So.
Go back and watch it because you can find it easily. It was Robert Redford's first directorial. It was his directorial debut, but it was also the first. It introduced Timothy Hutton, the actor whose father was Jim Hutton, who had died very young in life. Timothy Hutton was his first role, and he won Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Donald Sutherland was in it, Mary Tyler Moore. It was a great breakout role for her. But this was an ordinary family living in an ordinary street in an ordinary town, and their oldest son was killed in a boating accident. And it's watching the nucleus of their world absolutely fall apart with the death of this child. And then realizing all the fragmented pieces that were holding them together so that when Bucky died, there was just nothing left. I mean, it could not sustain itself. And yet when it all got down to the basics at the very end, there was his father and son who just loved each other. They just loved each other. And one wanted to be loved and one wanted to love. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful story. But it's so true. It's just ordinary people, and then the Beatles sang it. It's an ordinary day or it's just another day, I think is the way they sang it. And same thing with Dust. These are just ordinary people, but one in particular is about to leave an extraordinary legacy and she doesn't even know it.
Tell me again the artist in the Kansas group that is found.
Kerry Livgren.
Spell that for me. Livgren.
Kerry, Kerry. And there's a very funny bit at the end. Do you remember their song, Carry On, Wayward Son?
Wayward Son. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So when that song first came out, I knew, because I've always been interested in all the details in the singers and the songwriters and all of this. So I would look these things up, and I knew that Kerry Livgren was the artist behind Carry On Wayward Son. And I thought they were singing, Carrie, You're My Wayward Son. So I actually put that in the book, where the daughter says to her mom at the end, she said, for the longest time, I thought they were singing, Carrie, You're My Wayward Son. And so they're getting in they think it's funny. They both think it's funny. And then they're getting in an elevator and she just belts it out, Carrie, You're My Wayward Son. And they're laughing, it's like, it's a very tender moment. It's a kind of a tense moment. And then all of a sudden it ends with the laughter being, echoing in this elevator. But that was actually me. And so I admit that in the acknowledgments that I really thought that's what they were singing. Back in the day, they didn't put lyrics on anything. And we didn't have the internet. We had to try to figure out what they were saying.
And
so
it could be difficult. It would.
Yeah.
It could.
Yeah.
Have you reached out? Does Kerry know the influence?
Well, actually, I don't know that he knows, but my agent knows his brother. And so we are trying to get a message to Kerry. So I have hashtagged his name on everything because I would love for him to know how this book, or how his song influenced the book. And then who knows but what the book will influence someone down the line. And again, somebody can look back and say, oh, well, Eva Marie Everson wrote this book. Well, then I'll have to say, oh, well, Carrie Livgren wrote this song. See,
Well, I'm going to make this easy for you. Just get a hold, let them know that both of you can come on pjnet.tv and share and that'll cinch the deal. I'm just telling you.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, we may be able to work that out. Who knows?
How much notice, what did Michelle say when she contacted you to be on tonight? Because I want to compare notes, because I got a different story, I'm pretty sure.
She said, hey, would you like to take my slot at 9:30 on Wednesday night?
Which is way past your bedtime, I understand.
Yeah, it is. It's a whole hour. I mean, like, we're now at an hour and a half past my bedtime. But she said, it'll give you, I'd love for you to be able to talk about dust. And I said, sure. So, yeah, I'll take a nap. I took a nap.
Yeah. Oh, well, I only get about 3 to 4 hours of sleep at night.
It's crazy.
But
I used to be that way.
if I can get my 1 hour or hour and a half in the afternoon, I'm good till 4 in the morning. I'm just go. And it's, I don't know if I can always do that, but while I can, praise God, just.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I was in nursing, and sometimes I would, this was back in the day when you did not work 12-hour shifts, you worked 8-hour shifts.
Really?
But every so often the next person didn't come in. And so you would have to work a 16-hour shift. And one of the things that I remember is that once you hit a certain hour, you were just on overdrive after that. If you could just get past hour 10, then 11 through 16 was not bad at all.
Yeah, it's like that 13th mile in a marathon. If you, that's
exactly.
If you can get over that hump, you're good. Well, gosh, and nurse, you look the part. I think you would have made it. Yeah, you were.
Well, I didn't kill anybody on purpose. That's that's the good news.
Well, it's good. It's good to hear. Your story. It's great to hear
or even on accident. I mean, people. I was a geriatric nurse for a while, so obviously people died, and just in hospital nursing, people die. But I didn't cause anybody to die. That was always I would drive to the hospital every day, say, Lord, please don't let me kill anybody.
Yeah, and Morgan didn't exist back then. Today, you would know. If you were remotely connected to a death or injury, if you were,
I went into nursing because I liked General Hospital, and it looked so easy on General Hospital. But I discovered that it's not an easy job at all. But I did love my patients, and I went into after a season predominantly medical office nursing, and that made it a little bit easier. But just
it's a calling. It's a calling. My daughter is a CNA, and of course she can't share names and such. But it's a calling. If you aren't called to do that, don't go into it. It's a bad. It will end badly.
Absolutely. And I had circumstances where family members were brought in, and you just kind of have to separate yourself from the fact that this is a family member. Friends were brought in. Loved ones, and you just separate yourself from that fact that this is someone I love dearly, and you just see them as a patient while they're there.
I was very reluctant to hire someone who was not only a friend, a family friend, not a relative, but you've got to separate yourself. And I told him, I said, Ronnie, I will fire you just like anybody else. And if that happens, how are we going to interact in a small town and go to the same church? You okay with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I laughingly, I can say this now, but I probably had been a nurse maybe 2 months, and we had some kind of a virus that was going through. I don't know, but I was in charge of pediatrics, but my floor was loaded with adults during all that. And I was giving shots with Cristacillin, I think it was. And that was a really hard shot to give because it was almost like thick milk So you would have to rub it between your hands like this to get it warm to liquefy it again. And then, it was given in the glute. And so you had to shoot it in very slowly because it was so thick. It was very painful. It was a very painful shot to receive. And I thought this name looked very familiar, but I was in a town outside of where I had grown up, and I walked in, and sure enough, it was a boy I went to high school with. So I was like, hey, how are you? He goes, hey, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, I'm here to give you a shot. Roll over.
There's so many things I could say that I'm not going to say. There's so many. Dog. I could tear that one up. Those
experiences end up coming back in my books. I mean, they really do. I use a lot of my nursing experience in my books, in my editing that I do for other people. Just that experience of having been not only in the hospital as a nurse, but then my hospital experiences with my brother in 2019, where, the new normal was living in a hospital and then eventually living in hospice. So, yeah.
So much. Well, we've kept you up way past your bedtime. You have persevered so well, and you now that you've had a nap, I live on nicotine and caffeine. I mean, it just keeps me going. I figure if you can't thread the needle of a running sewing machine, you need more coffee. And so anyway,
that's right.
So, all right, well, folks, it has been. Eve, thanks for sharing with us, and Michelle, if you're out there, thank you for stepping aside and being so gracious.
She's the best.
Well, yeah, I won't mention on the air the story she told me while you were here. Anyway, that's okay. I forgive her. I forgive her. She has. She's going to be. Maybe that'll make us even, because she's probably had to forgive me far more than the other way around. But all right. Well, Eve, thanks for sharing with us. And by golly, we're excited for not only for you, not only for your book, but for the difference that you and your book are going to make. And I will get on the phone right now and call Carrie Livgren and let her know that you said I.
No, it's a he. Carrie is a he.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he's a good friend of mine. I know that. What's his first name? Anyway, I had no idea, but it's good to know that something good came out of all that old rock and roll. And now that you think about it, by the way, some of the heroes, Lex Luger was a professional wrestler, and he was. You remember him? Do you know Lex Luger?
Yes, I don't know him personally, but I remember.
That surprises me. He was my hero. Do you know what Lex Luger's doing these days?
No.
Preaching.
Mm-mm. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
How about Caleb Quay, the bass guitarist for the Elton John band during the Cocaine albums? You know what he's doing these days?
Preaching.
And I was right there with him. And you know what I'm doing these days?
Preaching.
It surprises the hell out of people when they find out I'm
preaching. God can call all kinds of people.
Well, I've learned something tonight. I need to refrain from saying I wasted so many years, because actually those years impact me today, but in a positive way. And thank God for His grace and His mercy.
Amen.
And His forgiveness. And we all just want to hear it. Well done, my good and faithful servant. Eva, it's been so much fun. Thanks for visiting with us tonight.
Thank you.
And we'll do it again as soon as I arrange for Carrie to be on the program. I'll
that would be great.
All right, sounds good. All right, folks, can't have much more fun than that, can you? Hey, there is the view from the Eagle's Nest, high atop the broadcast facilities here at pjnet.tv. What a fun time it has been. But the fun never ends here, you know. We're going to shut it down for tonight, but tomorrow night we'll be back, and we hope that you will too. Now, before I leave, by the way, I know we go long. There are some things going on, okay? And I'm going to surprise you. It won't be this Friday, unless there's a miracle of some kind. But I'm going to surprise you. Hang on for the ride, folks. It's going to be great. Hey, listen, before I leave, I have a serious question for you to ask yourself. And not only ask yourself, but answer yourself. First question. What is the boldest thing that you've ever done for Jesus Christ? And the second question would then be, well, how long ago was that? I hope none of us will be satisfied with either answer.